They say your past defines you. That's a lie. Your past doesn't define you. It refines you. Welcome to the Mile Marker Mindset Podcast, where real stories meet real change. Hosted by Mark Keith, a voice forged by the miles and refined by the mindset. Shift your mindset. Shift your life. Let's go to work.
Hey there, my name is Mark. Here at the Mile Marker Mindset Podcast. On with me today is Julie. She's a retired family attorney. She's also my wonderful aunt-in-law and an expert in all things relationships and has a lot to offer. Good afternoon, Julie.
Hello, everyone. How are you? Yes, I don't know if I call myself an expert, but I have a lot of knowledge for sure.
That's fair. Expert's a very specific term.
Yes.
Is anybody really ever an expert, though? You know what I mean? And people call themselves experts or gurus, but is that actually a thing?
I don't think it is. Because I think the definition of expert is that you know everything. And if you think you know everything, then you really know nothing. We should always be learning different things. Yeah.
That's true. If you're an expert, then you theoretically know everything. And yeah, you're always learning. So
Right.
why don't you introduce us a bit to yourself? Tell us kind of your story, where you come from.
Right. My name is Julie. I just recently retired. I am over the hill. I'm 55, so I don't consider myself midlife anymore. I think I'm over the hill. But so my life is that I was an attorney for 26 years, and I am now officially retired, which a lot of people think is kind of nuts at this age. I was a therapist prior to going to law school. I was married for 30 years, and I'm single but living with somebody right now. So I am learning a whole new way of living for sure.
Awesome. And what kind of life did you have before where you're at now? What are the differences between then and now?
Right. The differences before, obviously very structured. Every day was an alarm, getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning, ate the same thing every morning for breakfast, wore a business suit, 4-inch heels, went to work and helped people all day long, got home around 7 p.m., worked some more to about 1 a.m. That was my life. Weekends, I had an amazing support system of friends. So I never sat still. I can tell you that for sure. Now, if I get up before 11 a.m., it is a miracle. I'm at a slow pace, relax. If I take 2 showers a week, it is retired life. In fact, I have a TikTok on that as well, been retired. And the feedback has been fantastic from people who are my age who are retired. So it's just learning how to slow yourself down and take care of your own needs and self, which is a big difference for me. I used to take care of everybody else, and now I'm just really taking care of me and my grandkids.
Awesome. Definitely a lot of fun stuff on your TikTok and stuff. I'm a little bit younger than you. I definitely get stuff out of it too. So it's definitely appealing for people of all ages. I think we can all learn something from everybody else. Definitely.
Yeah, I think that the people who do respond to my TikToks are definitely all ages. Recently, I've been getting a little more serious with my TikToks, and I've had a lot of people who actually DM me over my TikTok, wanting to meet up with me, wanting to talk to me over the telephone. It's been great. I've actually established some new relationships because of my TikTok. I'm asking my advice.
Oh, very neat. So what was your breaking point, turning point in your life between kind of the high stress, high stakes world of being an attorney, especially a family attorney, to now being retired and spending your days on a boat, waking up at 11?
Right.
Where's the kind of the turning point in your life of where things started to shift and you started seeing kind of change in your life?
I would say that there was no definitive one turning point for me. It was a gradual decision I had made with my husband at the time. We had always agreed that I should retire at the age of 54 or 55. He knew that my job was killing me for about 10 years. And when I say killing me, when I define that as it was high stress, the workload was unbelievable. I never turned a case away. I was working every holiday, every vacation. I was answering emails, sometimes even at 3 in the morning, I would answer a client's email. Alarm would go off at 5 a.m. and I would work for half an hour from my bed before I would even get up and use the washroom. And so he knew that it was just not a good lifestyle for me. And I'm very healthy. I like to go to therapy. I like to do what I call even self-therapy. I read books. I also like to exercise and eat very well, but my brain and the stress in my body, I knew I actually wasn't being healthy at all. And so it was a long time coming. And then once I keep saying my first husband because I'm divorced. Then when you lose part of your assets, you realize I may not be able to retire. So you do meet with your financial advisor. That's still a possibility. And I found out it was. I still could retire. And so it was just like, you know what? Just because I'm single, it doesn't mean I shouldn't still live the life that I've always wanted to lead. So I still did it.
Yeah. Nice. So, of all the different kinds of lawyers, what drew you to family law specifically?
All right. So that's pretty interesting. So a lot of I did a TikTok on this too. So many people go to law school and they say, I want to do this kind of law.
Hmm.
And unless you want to be like a patent lawyer, something where you have to have then a specialized degree or a specialized bar you have to take, not just your regular bar to be an attorney, you really don't know what kind of lawyer you're going to be, what you're going to practice in, because you just need a job. And unless you're going to start your own law firm, you just need a job. And so I had applied to many different law firms at that point in time. And I took a job and I was like, what do you want me to do? I did give parameters of what I didn't want to do, but they told me we hate family law, which is defined as divorce, custody, parent-time paternity, child support, things like that. And they said we hate it. And so you get to do it. So I really didn't have a choice in the matter. And I took it upon myself. I really did teach myself because they just said, here are your files. And I went with it. And I think because I also have a master's in psychology, I do like to speak with people. I like to learn about the person, not just you want support. What is your money that you earn? This is what I can give you. I actually would ask questions about people and get to know people. And before I knew it, these people are friending me on Facebook. They're asking me questions about anything but family law. I became friends with many of them. And I think it's that it's not just my personality, it's also the psych degree helped me just to get to want to know people. And I didn't give therapeutic advice, but I would maybe give suggestions and I would help them make better decisions in their personal life, which may have nothing to do with the divorce itself. And so that just kind of just ramped up and ramped up. And then it was becoming the most successful part of my law firm because I was with partners at that time. And I was like, you know what? Nobody wants to do this, but I'm actually pretty good at it. And I like people. I don't want to sit in an office all day and not be with people. So that just got me on the family law path. And then I did it for 26 years.
Cool. So, for those of us like myself that don't understand how things work after law school, so if you picture like a flow chart, you go from law school and then down to being a family lawyer. Was the firm you went to the ones that told you you're going to be a family lawyer?
That's exactly right.
Oh, I got you. So they had other sorts of areas of law, and then they just kind of designated you.
Exactly. So it was a general practice law firm. So they had
okay.
collection work. So they would actually represent creditors to go against debtors who didn't pay their bills. They did criminal law, they did corporate law, they did personal injury, federal work. And even though in the beginning I did aspects of all of those laws myself, they just realized that the family law niche was just something I was going to be good at, and it brought in good money for them. And I really ended up not minding doing it. So we went with it.
So a lot of people have this glamorous view of law and lawyers, especially criminal lawyers, and they don't really think a lot of the conflict you could get into being a family lawyer. They think it's mostly just divorces and child support. I know when we talked before, there was a whole lot I had no idea about. So can you talk a little bit about what it's really like to be a family lawyer for that long and some of the rather interesting stories you have to deal with?
Yeah. In terms of the joke, I'm friends with a lot of criminal attorneys. And because in family law, you also have the crime aspect as well, especially if you have domestic violence and rape and things like that, violations of orders of protection. There's that crossover because even though I could have helped somebody, when there's a crime, a civil lawyer doesn't really get involved because it's the prosecutor who gets involved. And so therefore, I would, though, become friends sometimes with even the defense lawyers and try to find out how to help my clients because they're soon to be ex-spouse or the father of their child may be hiring a different defense lawyer. So I would kind of sneak in and get some information and share it with my client that way as well. But the going joke between these criminal lawyers and family law attorneys is that people think that dealing with alleged murders and rapists is like the worst thing in the world. And the joke is this. They show up to look good in front of everybody because they're a potential criminal and they want somebody to say, you're not a criminal, right? So they are going to fit the part. Whereas in family law, it's so emotional and people just forget the rules of the road. They don't care about fair fighting. They just take anything that comes at them and they just explode so many times. And they actually show up to be the worst. And so you're dealing with people who are at their worst. Their lives are thrown apart. They could have criminal issues into it. In-laws could be creating issues. They have monetary abuse. There's so many more things involved in family law. And that psychology degree that I had, and I used to be a therapist before I went to law school, that helped me see a bigger picture of these families. It's not just pay your retainer, I'm going to do the one task you hired me for. I would try to even get them with financial advisors. And even if a woman said she'd come in and she'd say things like, my spouse is cheating on me, the first thing I say literally is, before I get a credit report done, because you're getting a divorce, I would say, have you been to Planned Parenthood or a gynecologist to get a full panel to make sure you don't have a sexually transmitted disease?
Smart.
And lawyers don't give that kind of advice usually. They
Yeah.
look at me like, what? I'm just here for a divorce. But I really wanted to help them as a person, not just as a client.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense.
Yeah.
So is that all what you kind of expected it to be, or to turn out better or worse than you thought? What were your expectations versus the reality?
That's a really good question. I can say that I had absolutely no expectations. I mean, my very first case, so you graduate in May, you study all summer for the bar, and you still work as a quasi lawyer. You're not representing clients, but you're just kind of sitting in things all summer while you're studying for the bar. You take the bar in the summertime, and then you wait 2 months for your bar results. At least back then, that's how it was, because everything was handwritten. It wasn't electronic. So you wait a long time to see if you passed that bar. And you take it like in July, August. And then in November, you find out you passed it and you get sworn in. The next day after I get sworn in, my lead partner says, oh, here, you want to be a divorce lawyer? Here's a case and go to the courthouse. Never met the client, had no idea what we were even going to court over. I had
my
to
goodness.
read it really quick and represent him. So obviously I had zero expectations. I didn't know what to expect. And that day blew my mind. I lost. I should lose. I mean, I wasn't expecting to win. And I said, I will never have that feeling again. I will always be over prepared. I will be
Good for
super
you.
prepared. My clients will be over prepared. And I don't ever want to lose again. And I won the majority of my cases for 26
Awesome.
years after that day. So I don't resent I was thrown into it like that. I think sometimes you learn from losing, even though it wasn't a great situation for the client, unfortunately, and that's a different story. But that's something that definitely made me try to be the best I could be, because I've always felt like I'm my best or worst competitor. I just really strive to make sure my clients aren't just happy with the result, but they're happy with the way they were treated by me and by my staff, by the courtroom staff, and that they can learn the lessons I could teach them preparing for the trial, they could take with them in their future relationships as well.
That's a good point. You mentioned you started with a firm. You were basically voluntold you're going to be a family lawyer, pretty much.
Right.
And then you went from a firm to being an independent lawyer. What was that transition like? And what did you have to adjust from being with a firm to being just on your own?
I would tell you, I think that was probably one of the scariest points of my life. It was scarier than law school, taking the bar exam, and my first trial, because I had been with two partners for 15 years, and I thought that we're going to sail into the sunset together, and it was going to be great. It was me and two other men. And we had some associates as well, and a pretty big support staff. And the thing is, that was thrust upon me. I wasn't able to plan it. It was a situation where I was on a holiday vacation with my family, and I learned that there was some money decisions being made where people were making money in the firm and I wasn't going to be making money in the firm. And so it was like, you know what? Do I sit here and take it? It's almost like a personal relationship. Do I take this verbal abuse, this financial abuse, and just be kind of spit on? Or am I going to do something about it? Am I going to complain and cry, or am I going to do something about it? And my husband at that time and I, we said, let's do something about it. And it was so scary. I almost could get a little heart palpitations thinking about how scary it was. And you know what? It turned out amazing. All my clients came with me because they get the choice if they want to do that or not. It's not up to the firm. The client gets to choose because you work for the client. And I decided to put a lot of money into advertising. And you know what? The first month we had said, I probably won't make money for the first year. The first month I was already making a profit. Wow. And the income was higher than I ever expected. The success rate was higher than I ever expected.
Impressive.
I think my skill set increased more than I ever expected. And even though we don't rank and compare notes, which lawyers are always in the courtroom, and I was one of the top 3 or 4 or 5 attorneys of the county for sure. I was always in the courtroom with the judges, and with the same 4 or 5 attorneys. We're always like, we almost have all the cases together. Wow. And it was so scary. I'm so thankful that I was forced into that position, because that just really changed my life and trajectory. And I never look back and say, gosh darn it, I can't believe that happened. I say, gosh darn it, I wish I did it earlier.
Isn't that always the case, right?
Yep.
If I
Yep.
knew then what I knew now, my decision might be
Yep.
different. But then again, you don't
Yep.
have that learning process to go off of either. So who knows what the
Yep.
right answer is, right?
Fear can be very paralyzing because we assume what's going to happen. We never assume the good's going to happen. We assume the bad's going to happen.
So if you were to give somebody advice of having to go out and start something and take a leap of faith, would you just tell them, just do it?
Yes, I have spoken to in the professional field. I would speak to different lawyers, and because they would come to me and ask me like, "How did you do it? Look at you now," kind of a situation. And it's not that I'm special, and it's not that it just worked out by a miracle. It was a lot of hard work, and like I said, because I compete with myself, and I don't like to fail. I don't, and so I
Hmm.
really put everything I had to it. And other people, and I guess it depends on how you define fail. Some people work half the hours, they make half the money, and they're at peace. That is a success for them, but that wasn't a success for me. I wanted to be one of the best. And so that was something I put upon myself. Nobody put it upon me. So I take ownership of that. But yes, I tell people go for it. Like selling my home where I lived in Northwest Indiana, that I had lived for over 20 years with my kids, and I built that house, and it was almost a piece of me. This house was, it was a
Yeah.
home that I was emotionally connected to, and to sell it and sell half my belongings, give away half my clothes, quit my job, and come down here to Florida, where I had just vacationed a few times but never lived. I mean, that
Yeah.
was another thing, basically. It was just on a personal note rather than professional, where I said, just go for it. And
Awesome.
people comment like, how'd you do it? I wish I could do it. I'll go, just do it. I tell everybody, just do it. Just come down here. We'll be best friends again. Just come down here. And they look at me like, I can't do it. I'm like, I did it. Like, you can do it. But yeah,
Yep.
fear is paralyzing.
Interesting. That's interesting. So I'm sure you had to deal with a lot of tough people and tough situations. Again, I know you told me some stories in our pre-interview, some really crazy stuff that happened. How did you deal with the stress and the high stakes and everything all involved with that? What were
Right.
some methods, healthy or perhaps unhealthy, that
Right.
helped you deal with that?
Yes, I definitely have both of those kinds of examples. So I would say the healthy is that my husband was an attorney as well. And I really believe being married to an attorney was a fabulous thing because they got it. You can come home from work every day and just spill your guts. And they knew what judge you're talking about. They knew what attorney you're talking about. They understand the conflict of trying to get along with the client that you're trying to help, but the client doesn't see it as help. They got it. You didn't have to explain the system to them. So I can't tell you. There are a few lawyers married to lawyers, and I say that's fantastic. I think that's because being an attorney is it's a different kind of a job that most people just don't get. And so that was helpful. And then the things that were also helpful is that I had a great social life. I mean, on Friday, it was like high heels off, jean jacket on, let's go have a good time. But that was the unhealthy part too, because like I told you in the past, is that I was a drinker every Friday and Saturday. I could never, in fact, I don't think I ever stayed home on a Friday and Saturday once my kids were of a certain age. I was out every single Friday and Saturday with the same group of people. We would not just have a glass of wine and relax. We would get drunk, and we would drink to get drunk and to escape. And I never hid that. I was always like, yeah, like I need to get out of this situation. I need to get out of this. And then I would work all day Saturday, and Saturday night we get drunk again. And Sunday was my sober day before I go to work on Monday. I never drank Monday through Thursday, but weekends I would let loose. And now that I don't have that stress anymore in my life, it's like, I don't have to do that anymore. No, it's like, I don't need to party anymore. I don't need to get drunk anymore. I don't need to do any of that stuff anymore. And I'm not telling people not to have a few drinks or
Of
do whatever.
course.
I'm just saying that for me, it's amazing that I realized it truly was work stress related release for me, which is actually satisfying to know that it was a situational kind of situation, if I could use the same word twice.
Sure.
That's not who I am as a person. And that with a different environment around me, I don't need that. And I'm at peace without it. I'm healthy, I'm relaxed. And yeah, I may have a margarita at a Mexican restaurant, but I'm not drinking to get drunk anymore or to escape anything. And I'm like, it's 10 o'clock, I can go home. I don't care. And so it's nice to know that I wasn't that person. It was just my circumstances, and I don't have to be that person.
So you mentioned drinking as an escape. I think a lot of us are guilty of that and different ways of coping with different issues in our life. So what
Right.
to you, besides the change of careers, was a sign to say, you know what, maybe I should stop drinking as much and kind of tone down a bit and kind of change some things?
Yeah, what's interesting is that I didn't even make a decision. It was just that I just didn't have the need to do it anymore. I just
Huh.
don't have the need. So it wasn't even
Hmm.
a conscious decision like, okay, well, now don't do that anymore, Julie. It was just like, it's Friday night and I haven't had a drink in 8 days and I don't care. And then there'll be a day where it's a Tuesday afternoon. I'm like, you know what? I'm having Italian and I'm going to open a bottle of wine. I'll have two glasses while I'm watching
Right.
the Cubs on baseball. But the thing is that it's a cognitive choice that I want to do that because I like the taste of wine, not because I'm escaping. And I think that's the difference is
Hmm.
that I just don't need it in my life anymore. Which is really a great feeling to have.
It makes a lot of sense, certainly. So you have seen, I'm sure, a lot of people, their absolute worst. I know you mentioned that a little bit earlier. I've been through a divorce. I can certainly relate to that. What are some of the stories you have to, like the really bad stories that people hear? They'd be like, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe that happened to her. She lived through that." I mean, I know you have some crazy stuff that happened to you.
Yeah, I mean, so I guess I could look at it two different ways. I mean, you have the generalized conflict, maybe with a judge or maybe with an opposing attorney, which can make your life a living hell. And you can have it with your clients as well, where you're telling your client these 10 steps, I know I can win this case for you, but you have to do these 10 steps. And
Hmm.
they tell you, well, my cousin said this, or I went on Google. And I'm like, okay, whoa. Like, so you can have conflict with your own client because they're telling you how to be an attorney. You're paying me to be the lawyer or you be the client. And it can sound condescending, but I'm sorry, but that's the case. Like, you hired me to do a job for you. And I'm not going to tell my surgeon how to cut my skin. So don't tell me how to admit a piece of evidence, right? So you can have
Yeah,
conflict with your own clients. Some
it's
of the
wild.
worst conflicts that I had with my clients was that when they would just give up on their kids. And I
Hmm.
consider that even a conflict because my job is to build a family together, right? And to resolve things and to resolve differences, not to pick fights with other people. And so that was always concerning when somebody just says, my kid doesn't need me, or I'm not going to fight anymore for my kid. And again, that's where I stopped being a lawyer and I'm more of a friend, person, therapist. And I'm trying to convince
Hmm.
them to do the right thing for their kid. And so that was a conflict I'd have to deal with. Then there's just the crazy stories. I mean, the crazy stories of that. There'd be times where I would be in my bedroom and there'd be an opposing party. It was always the opposing parties that were stories where they'd say, "We see your car in the driveway," and my car was in the driveway, and they would describe my house, and it was scary. I
Wow.
no longer have a published telephone number. And then you have the ones where you actually have orders of protection and no contact orders because the opposing party tells their therapist that they want to kill me,
Oh my
their
gosh.
wife's lawyer, as well as my children. And they knew everything about my kids, everything, like their school schedule, they knew. It wasn't like stuff that's just on Facebook. And so you have those kind of situations where you're your own safety. And I don't think people realize that probably doesn't happen too much like in the corporate world. And I've never even heard a criminal defense lawyer, but there's been family law attorneys, even in the county where I practice, when I was a baby lawyer, where they actually got shot on the courtroom steps.
Holy cow.
Yeah, on the divorce date. And I'll never forget when I was a baby lawyer when I went to the Gary courthouse and my first day at the Gary courthouse, and there's kidnappings there, there's carjackings there, there's rape in the parking garage. It's not a safe place to go sometimes.
Goodness
And so
gracious.
you walk up there and you see the two big glass doors and there's bullet holes all over the glass doors. And you're like, okay. So I don't think people realize that personal safety is something too. It's not just conflict with people and winning for people or having that occasional loss or your personal life and stress, but your physical safety is an issue in family law too. People are literally at their worst and they're
Wow.
losing their spouse or they got busted for having an affair or whatever the case may be. Like they're losing their marbles and they just don't seek help and they seek violence instead. So I've
Wow.
had some scary moments for sure. Yeah.
You mentioned you were friends with some of your clients. Are you still friends with some of your clients, or is that kind of gone by the
Yes.
wayside since you
It's
moved?
not.
Or
No, actually, I mean, I'm still friends with a lot of my clients
oh,
actually.
cool.
And My significant other cracks up because he's like, what are you emailing? Your thumbs are going. And I'm like, yeah, another client. I still get average 1 to 2 past clients a week contacting me. If they still have my cell phone, they'll text me. I get DMs on Facebook or Instagram.
That's cool.
And just saying, hey, you know what? I have a new problem. I only trust you. And I'm like, I can't practice anymore. And they're, oh, God, I know, but can you give me a referral? I only trust you to even give me a referral. Or I've had some clients, this one man, he's fantastic. He actually lives on the east coast of Florida. But his divorce was in Indiana. And so I had to refer him out to somebody when I was going through my retirement stage. And he DM'd me like 3 or 4 times on Instagram, just letting me know what happened in his case. He gave me a copy of his final. He was so happy that he had won. He loved the referral I gave him. He's like, even though you didn't finish it, he goes, if it didn't start the way it started with you, I don't think it could have finished the way it got finished. And so I still get thank yous. And yeah, it's really quite remarkable that you still have, and it's been 1 year and I'm still averaging 1 to 2 a week will still reach out to me.
Wow. So it's good that people still keep in touch, even though you moved a bit away from Indiana to Florida.
Yeah, it is. It's kind of, and it's a selfish good feeling.
It's awesome.
I sadly feel like they like me. It's like people, like I wasn't just their attorney. They actually found me as a real confidant, which is kind of cool.
It's hard to keep up with people normally, but especially with that distance. So there must be some really good friendships then. It's good to hear. It's awesome.
Yep.
Anything that's ever happened to you that may have made the news, people may have known about, anything on that you want to touch on?
Yeah, so there's one of the cases, I mean, this is just one of a few, but I think the most stunning case was where, and it's funny is that this happened next door to one of my lawyer friends, and she reads the paper, and she was on vacation when it happened. She's like, okay, Julie, I see your name in a newspaper, and this is my next door neighbor too. So what happened was there were 3 brothers who I had represented all 3 of their wives. So I did the in-law part of the family. And so I divorced one of them, and he was living in the country of Georgia over by Russia. And so then I did the middle one, that wife contacted me too, because the wives were all talking. And then the youngest son is now getting divorced. Now the first 2, they're typical conflicts, but it was just divorce money, very easy kind of cases in terms of that. But the last one, the man did have some mental health issues. And so when my client came to see me, like on a Tuesday or Wednesday of a certain week, and she's like, I'm really scared. I don't know exactly what his diagnosis is, but there's something going on. And I think I need to leave with the kids for a while. And I'm going to file for divorce and order protection because he's threatened my life. But it was kind of like setting that kind of a tone. So then that weekend, she leaves and she just floods my emails. I mean, floods my emails with these screenshots of text messages. I'm like, okay, quit doing this. Well, when you get back into town, we'll talk about it. What had happened was she picked up the children. They were very small. She went to her mother's house out of state to escape while she was going to have me file and do the order protection and everything like that. He had went to the daycare center and he had threatened to harm the workers there. They contacted the police, obviously, because they have other children they have to keep safe. And coming to find out, the phone calls were coming from his home. He was in his house then later on that day, and he was flooding her with text messages. And when I say flood, I'm not talking about hundreds. I'm not talking about thousands. I'm talking about tens of thousands of texts and like long text messages, not blurbs, over about 24-hour period. And he's talking about me because he's telling his brothers, oh, her name is Julie. They know who Julie is because I did their divorces. And so he starts making some terrible statements about me and how I'm unethical. And I'm like, I've heard that all before. I'm like, whatever, I could care less. I'm worried about my client, her safety. Come to find out, he starts now making suicidal threats that he's going to harm himself. He's going to commit suicide. He's going to hurt anybody that comes his way. So now our town SWAT team comes in.
Holy cow.
Like the army truck comes in. They're on the roof. It was unbelievable. It was in the newspaper the next day. It was quite startling. But again, I'm only concerned about my client.
Sure.
We get through that process. He gets arrested, as you could imagine. He claims how he has mental health issues. My client confirms that. So he gets put into a mandatory mental health facility. And that's when we start finding out things because he's writing letters with legal pads, just the tiniest little handwriting, very detailed, scary looking drawings and plans. Again, all about my client. And then a few days later, the therapist contacts me, and as a former therapist myself, I know there's confidentiality. And as a lawyer, I know there's confidentiality.
Right.
So I'm like, why is his therapist calling me? This is odd. And she's when there is going to be future crimes, right? Past crimes they don't have to tell anybody about, but future crimes they must. And future crimes, like he wants to kill you and your kids. Besides your client, he wants to kill you. And I'm like, oh, come on. Yeah, I'd be like, I'm blowing her off. So then the next day, the police shows up at my law firm and they're like, we're filing 3 felony counts against Mr. Person. And we want you to read the charging information before we send it to the prosecutor's office. And there will be a no contact order. I'm like, what?
Holy cow.
My staff runs in. They're kind of freaking out. And yeah, it was all legitimate threats. And so it was about a 2-year process, right? He was in jail. I put cameras up everywhere. I had mace. I told my staff, if you don't feel comfortable and you're scared because you're like the first person that anyone is going to see, I understand. They stayed with me, thank goodness. But it was very traumatizing. I had to get my ex-husband on it to put the security cameras up. Jeez. And then we had the sentencing hearing and I did not speak. I wanted just to be about my client, and I helped her with her victim impact statement. She spoke, and he was sentenced to even more prison time. The no contact order lasted for about 3 years. It's not in effect anymore. And it's funny that you bring that story up because my client contacted me last week, actually.
Really?
And just wanted to let me know how the kids are doing, how she's doing, how her ex-husband is doing, how he's on a really good regimen with his therapist. And even though he doesn't have contact with the kids still because he's been deemed a danger to them, he, though, can write notes to them. He can text, and they're all appropriate. So they know that there's still their dad out there and he loves them. Just he can't be seen in person right now. And so she just wrote me out of the blue, and just wanted to let me know. And this happened 5 or 6 years ago. So yeah, that was one of my craziest ones for sure.
That is absolutely crazy. It's funny because we all see TV shows and movies, and it's always the criminal lawyers that got to deal with all this, never family lawyers. So it's really fascinating that family lawyers got to deal with this. It's just something you don't normally think of.
That's very true. Yep. And I didn't either until it happened. So
that is insane. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
So let's switch gears a little bit. You learned a lot, I'm sure, about relationships and life and seeing people at their best, seeing people at their worst. So what are some of Julie's rules for kind of life and relationships? So what's some parting advice you can give to people, some tips you can, stuff they could put in their pocket and take with them?
The one thing that I would say to my clients, so, when you have a potential client come in, you do a 1-hour consult with them. And you're not just finding out what's going on, you're also finding out, do we have a good vibe? Are you willing to listen to me? Do you like me? And do I like you? Now, I don't have to like all my clients, and I didn't like all my clients, trust me. And I'm sure some of my clients didn't like me. We knew we had a job to do, but it's kind of like a sales pitch, kind of going both ways. But again, I would always get sucked into my therapeutic mode. And when I would just sit there and listen to the stories of a lot of these people, and I'd always ask the question first off, is there any chance of reconciliation? Now, I would never ask that question in an abusive situations. Okay. I call them regular mom and pa getting divorced. They just kind of lost their love, lost the spark, those kind of cases. I'd say, is there any chance of therapy, any chance of reconciliation? Because divorce lawyers have a really bad reputation. People hate us until they need us. Even in my TikTok, it's just the slamming I get is unbelievable. But I was never like that. I would turn cases away. I would say, let's reconcile if we can. And the one thing that I would teach or explain to people, because they would say, we get along, we're best friends, but there's this one problem. And they would say, you know what? I never thought about even reconciling. I thought this was it. And thank you for even bringing that up. And I would tell them, all lawyers aren't made the same. All doctors aren't made the same. All therapists aren't made the same. And I'm like, please, when you start interviewing therapists, and if you're going to try to reconcile, to me, relationships are a 3-prong. You have to be best friends, right? Shared interests. And if you even don't share all interests, be willing to share your interests with the other person. The other person be willing to accept that. There's that bird. Have you heard of that bird example where they say a good test is when you're outside and if your partner says, oh, look at that bird. If your partner just says, whatever, there's no connection there. But if your partner goes, what bird? They're interested in you, right? That's a good test. So share those interests. The second thing is financial sharing. Now, Both people don't have to earn the same amount of money. That makes it easier, obviously, but you don't have to. But it has to be that it doesn't matter if one person's earning less or if they are earning nothing. All the money is in the household. Everybody you have shared passwords. Everybody can get into every single account. Unless it's a second marriage and maybe you have something set aside for your children, that's inheritance, that's different. I'm talking about the regular paying bill kind of money. And then the third is you have to have lots of sex. You have to have sex. And how you define lots of sex is different for everybody. And for
Sure.
some people, once a week is enough. Some people are like every other day. Some people are like morning and night. Whatever your rules are, you need to have those talks about your expectations because you bond through sex. You do. And you just don't bond by going to the Bon Jovi concert. You got to bond by being intimate with each other and loving with each other and open with each other. And so I always tell
I like
everybody,
that.
if you have a great sex life and you are best friends, but there's financial abuse, it's never going to work. You must have all three working in a synchrony for having a long lasting relationship for sure. So that's one of my hard truths I would tell people.
So make sure I understood you. We got best friends, shared money, and a lot of sex. It's a key to a good relationship. I like it. I like it. I'll hang on to that one. That's good.
Yeah.
What is it when a lot of people are in these relationships where you don't want to fight, so you're kind of walking on eggshells? Obviously, that's not a very healthy thing, but is there ways around that? Like, what's your opinion on? Like, I know I've been in situations like that, and past life experience, definitely not fun. But I'm sure a lot of people have been there. I'm sure you maybe have been there.
Yes, I have. And I think a different way also of saying is that if your partner's mood dictates your mood for the day, that's the same thing as basically walking on eggshells. That should never, ever be occurring. If they wake up in a bad mood, then they should just say, you know what? I'm not feeling it today. I'm in a bad mood. You want to give me some space, or I should give you some space so I don't react to my bad mood. I think that's a healthy way of doing it. The other person should not take that personal. Just say, thank you for telling me so we don't get into a fight. That's how it should. People should talk like they're in love with each other. People should talk like they want to say, I don't want conflict, so I'm going to warn you. There could be conflict today because we all have bad days. We really do. And so the walking on eggshells is that if I ever feel like I don't feel safe in saying something to you, that's like walking on eggshells. I should never feel like I have to say it in my head 10 times to say it the right way for you to receive it. I don't want a relationship like that at all. That's not living life. It's stress every single day. But there's a lot of onus on the person who's walking on eggshells. They should say, you know what? I feel like I walk on eggshells around you. And I don't want that feeling anymore. I've been wanting to say, can we get a new rug for the kitchen? But I'm scared to even ask because you're going to complain about money or you're going to do other things. And you should also be able to at least express that. And if your receiver of that information says, you know what, I don't want to receive it in a loving way, or you're not walking on eggshells, or they're going to be defensive, that's your answer. That's your answer, Vic. You know what? I'm going to walk away for the day. I'm going to walk away for life. I'm going to walk away for an hour, whatever it is. That's when you know this isn't safe for me. You're not willing to receive me. You're not a safe person for me. And I need to be in this relationship? Can you change or not?
So do you consider that, I mean, obviously not healthy, but do you consider that trying to be controlling over somebody if you have to be careful around everything they say?
It's manipulation, it's control. And the one thing that I believe is that people who do that, they honestly don't see it as manipulation and control. I never met anybody who does that behavior and they're like, yes, I'm controlling you. They have to be taught that over and over again, willing to accept that. I don't think it comes naturally to assume that. I think you have to really, I think a third party is the one who has to tell them, okay, I've listened to this story from both perceptions and I'm sorry, but this is controlling. This is manipulative. Whether you think it is or not, if you're unwilling to accept that title, you're never going to stop the behavior.
I get that. But it's one of those things, I think, where a lot of people, you have to be told many times, but until you're ready to hear it, you're not going to actually process it and receive it. It's similarly to, in like a legal sense, when you get a prenup and you try and prepare yourself for things, a lot of people would take that as you're just being negative, you're being pessimistic about the relationship. But what do you think about that?
So pessimism is something that I think people just automatically just go to because It's just easy for them. I mean, that's when people don't want to understand the real situation. So I would do prenups in my law practice, postnups in my law practice, and cohabitation, and they're all different, right? So the prenup is most people are most familiar with is before they get married. Most people do it if it's a subsequent spouse marriage and they've got children. They want to have some inheritance go to their children and not give it all to their spouse, which is, I think, the right thing to do. The postnup is after they've been married. And now they're like, you know what? We're having some situations. We may have some divorce going on. We may just want to separate. So let's go ahead and start talking about what's going to happen to our finances now. So if we don't make it, we don't have to fight later in the future and spend $20,000 in attorneys. Let's do it now while we're still talking. Then the cohabitation agreement, which is something I've just got involved with my significant other. And it's more akin to the prenup, but we're not married, right? So if we break up in year 1 or year 5 or year 15, we know what's going to happen with the belongings in the home, things we purchased together, what's going to happen with how we're going to divide equity in the home, capital improvements into the home. We have it in there like if we sell this house and move, how does that affect things? How we pay the monthly bills every year going forward. So all those things are put into it. So then, and this is something I'd always tell also my divorce clients, who would be amicable, come to an agreement, and we say, listen, you guys came to agreement on parenting time and other situations like that. Hopefully you can take your agreement, put it in a drawer, never look at it again, and just live life. Just live life. Just raise your kids. Just be civil to each other. It's the same thing with these agreements I just discussed. The point is not saying, well, I have to have this because we're going to break up. You know what? Hopefully we never have to look at it again. But if we break up, we don't have to fight. It's an enforceable contract in the court system. And we know what to expect. And I will tell you, I think it's very important too for the person who earns less money in the relationship, because so many people stay in a relationship because they can't support themselves out of it. But if there's a plan ahead of time, they know what they can and cannot do if they leave the relationship. And again, I'm not talking about abusive, just we've lost the spark. They know what they need out of it. They know they can rent something, if they can buy something. They're not just stuck because they have pre-planned for that already. And so I think then that puts them more at ease, because maybe if you don't have that, you may be wondering, what happens if we break up? What happens if we break up? What am I going to do? And now you're like, I know what's going to happen. So now I don't have to worry about breaking up. I could just love this person and worry about what's going to happen if we break up. Because I already know what's going to happen if we break up. So I think that can bring some ease into the relationship too.
So it's not really pessimism. It's more realistic protection. Just kind of, in the worst case, it's kind of like having a will, for lack of a better term.
Right.
Like we're all going to die at some point, right? So let's just get everything set up for if something were to happen, where it's all squared away, done. Don't got to worry about it.
Exactly. That's exactly. It brings peace. To be blunt, it just brings peace. Yeah.
What if you're kind of different topic? What if you're in a relationship where you're with somebody that, in front of everybody, they treat you great, they're the perfect spouse, whatever, but then behind doors, they really kind of treat you cruelly and treat you in a bad way. Obviously, that's not the real version of them, but that's the version people see as that great person. But I think a lot of people hope that that great person will eventually turn in from the cruel person to the nice person. And a lot of people have that false sense. I know it's kind of a different direction than the last question, but something I think it's good to bring up, though.
Yeah, it's very important. And I liken that to somebody with a narcissistic characteristics. They may not be narcissistic per se, but they can have characteristics of narcissism. And what's so scary about that kind of a person is that then the spouse that's experiencing it, they have a hard time explaining to other people that this person is not great at the home level. Because you're say, what are you talking about? Joe is amazing. He's the life of the party. He's this and this. You're sensitive. You know what you're talking about. You always find something to complain about. And you're living it. As soon as that door closes, that's Jekyll and Hyde. And that's very scary, because you are so very alone, because people may not believe you. And this happens in the court system, and it happens obviously at home too. And that's just something that I feel bad for people in those situations, because I think that people will not be believed, because they're like, what are you talking about? They're just so fantastic. And then what you said is a very good point. The very good point is that when you have a good time with this person at the restaurant or at the wedding or wherever it is, you're like, oh, they can be good. They're changing. They do like me, because everybody wants to be liked and everyone wants to be treated nice. And so you think that, and so you're always hoping. That's that damaging cycle. They say that. Have you heard of the Cheerios example?
No, go ahead.
Okay, so when you live in a situation like that for a long time, your nerve systems literally will change, where you become depressed because your neurons just change to this negativity all the time, and you feel like you don't deserve it. You feel like you are going crazy. You're being gaslit, whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
And then you go out in public with Mr. Nice, and gender specific doesn't matter. It can go either way, obviously, but you're out with Mr. Nice and they're so fantastic. And so now those good time neurons, the dopamine is going, you're all happy again, right? And the thing is that those are short lived, and the negative ones are stable. They happen almost every day because you don't go out publicly that much. And so this becomes your new reality. And so the Cheerio thing is that you take a box of Cheerios. That's how you teach people. You take a box of Cheerios and you have like 10 Cheerios all touching each other on the table. And those are your negative ones. You have 2 over here on the table, and those are your positive ones. And you have to tell people, unless you start taking new Cheerios from this box and adding it to the positive pile, you can manipulate your neurons to think better about yourself, to think better about your relationship, to think better about the other person. But you have to keep adding positive neurons to that chain. And then the negative ones are never going to go away. They're always going to be there because your brain, but they're just going to be small compared down to your positive ones. And so that's where somebody in that situation where they see this is a pattern and my negative is growing. Do I want to live like this? If they can get out of it, so many times they think, I'm never going to feel good again. But yes, you will. You definitely will. You just got to get those positive Cheerios building above the negative Cheerios.
That's really interesting, actually. I can also kind of relate to that. It's not just with significant others, it's with co-parents. I've been in situations where I've had an ex that was the picture, the great stepmom in front of everybody, but then behind closed doors is a whole different conversation. So I definitely can relate to being in a situation. It's not fun.
Oh, yeah.
It's definitely
No,
not
it's
fun.
not. No, it's not.
Definitely
No, it's not.
toxic.
Yes, exactly.
But the key there, I think, the takeaway is take the people to show you behind closed doors, because I think that's the real version of somebody that you see, not their representative, for lack of a better term.
Absolutely. And the thing is that even if you don't have those abusive tendencies ever, we're all always somebody different when we're in a group of people in a social setting. Even if we're at a wedding, we all act happier, a little bit different. We're dancing, we're talking to people we haven't seen in a long time. We're doing small talk, and it can be tiring, but we do it. There's always this facade. All of us are a little bit fake and phony. It's just though when we come home, are we verbally or physically abusive? That's the situation. But we're all a little bit phony and fake. But it's just sometimes it's socially acceptable because we're not abusive as well. And other times we are still abusive, so it's not socially acceptable anymore.
So it's mostly all about, I guess, about patterns. Because if you see somebody do one thing one time, that's kind of one up. If it happens the next time, the next time, and the next time, and you start to notice that there's a pattern. It's like, okay, now we're going down a direction that's not a good direction.
It's, and I got to tell you, it's like, sometimes I feel like I scream this from the rooftops about apologies. Like, if you get into 2 fights a year and the person says, I'm sorry after each one, that sorry is a true apology. It should be believed. And you should say, thank you for saying that. And that's accountability, acknowledging it, and move on with your day. But when somebody says they are sorry 5 times in the same argument, and that argument happens every other day, they are not sorry.
Right.
And you say that to somebody, and they honestly, they're like, I just said I'm sorry. It's like, if you were sorry and you felt my pain, you would not do this anymore. But you keep doing it over and over again. You're not sorry. And then they take that personal. And again, that's, to me, it's kind of like that Darvo or narcissism kind of personality. It's like, you're not sorry. Yeah. The patterns are very telling, for sure. Yeah.
We're definitely going to dive a bit more into conflict here in a moment. That's definitely something I'm going to talk to you a bit about. I know we got some projects too we've been working on. We'll get to that also here in a minute. Okay. But what are some common red flags or mistakes you've seen over and over in relationships, stuff that people should kind of be privy to besides just like patterns, kind of maybe stuff that people don't necessarily think of?
So I would say that things to look out for is defensiveness and contempt. I think that a lot of people end up losing their relationship with somebody because they just have contempt for the person, where everything they do or say, it just grates on your nerves. They can't do anything right. And we have this contempt, but we don't recognize contempt because we're not fighting. We're not cheating on somebody. We're not hitting somebody. We just have this contempt. And when it comes a year into the relationship or 20 years, it's that you have to, though, be honest. I have contempt for you. What is going on? Why do you think I've got contempt for you? Why is it bothering me now that you leave the toilet seat open? Like, but people don't talk about it. So the red flags, Mark, are on both sides. The person could be doing something that just drives you crazy. But if you're not going to say something about it, you are just as bad. You're just as bad. You're just a part of the problem, in my personal opinion. I think that if you complain about something or bring something that bothers you and the person gets defensive, that is the number one, that you just can't be with somebody who's going to be defensive constantly because they're not apologizing. And apologizing doesn't mean agreeing, by the way. It just means I'm seeing your side. It doesn't mean I agree with you. That's very important. A lot of people think that they're not going to apologize because they think I'm agreeing with you. And it's not that at all. But what ends up happening is that defensiveness of, they're not taking accountability. They're not validating how you feel. They're just making it not a safe space. And I think those red flags of contempt for somebody and defensiveness can just tear your soul apart. I think those things you have to be aware of and you have to talk about them. But when I say it goes on both sides, if you just let somebody be defensive and you just kind of put up with it, you don't bring it up and you don't say, hey, this is what I'm experiencing. I'm labeling this as defensive because this is what I'm hearing you say. Did you hear yourself say that too? If you're not willing to have those hard conversations, then some people can change on their own. Some people can't. And just because they can't change on their own doesn't mean that they're less of a person, that they're less loving. It just means that maybe they don't have the skill set that you're able to have. They weren't raised the same way that you were raised. They have a different sibling dynamic. There's so many different ways or reasons why that is. And there's nothing wrong. Some people saying, well, I shouldn't be spoon feeding you everything. Well, you can spoon feed once. I think you can say, listen, this is bothering me and this is why, and I don't want this to happen again. So what can we do to not have this happen again? So many things I see on Instagram Reels and TikTok lately is that people are saying, just get rid of them then. I'm like, no, that's not real life. That's not real life at all. It's okay to sit somebody down and say, this is what hurt me. And if you don't do that, then you're the red flag too. Because if you just assume people are going to change just because a rainbow came across and there's a pot of gold and a leprechaun, they're not going to. They're not going to. So you got to do your part in it too. You're in a relationship together. It's not just one person doing bad and I'm going to be the victim. You can say, listen, I don't want to be a victim anymore and I don't want to be a perpetrator anymore. So what can we do about this? And if the person is willing to do something, awesome. And if they're not, okay, bye-bye.
You also brought up a good point too, because it's not only being able to talk to your partner about what they're doing, but how to go about doing so. Because you can also talk down to somebody or do it in a non-loving, non-respectful way. So it definitely goes both ways, I think, and knowing how to talk to the person, have those conversations. They are important, but how you have them, I think, is just as important as actually having them. And being receptive to that constructive criticism. Because we can all, like we said in the beginning, we can all grow.
And I know you're going to get to your tools and book in a little bit here, but that is something that I came across by learning from you, Mark, this past week. And I actually, not during a discussion or a fight or a complaint, I actually sat my significant other down. I said, I've learned something today, and I want you to know what I learned today because I don't want to do this anymore. And what I learned was that even if you do something to me that is abhorrent and I have a right to bring it to your attention, I don't have the right to be a jerk how I bring it to your attention.
Absolutely.
And so many times the person who has been hurt thinks that they can do or say anything because they're the hurt one. I have a right to do this. And it's a completely different way of thinking. And it's something brand new for me that I just learned. I was like, wow, like mind blown kind of situation for sure.
It's one of those, the old adage, hurt people. It's not right, but that's unfortunately the way it is oftentimes. And you have to recognize that in the moment. And that's why it goes back to another podcast with the pause system, where you just have to take a beat and just kind of reassess where you're at and then come back in the conversation a little bit later once cool heads prevail. course.
Exactly. Yeah.
Hey, are there any myths about relationships or conflicts you want to bust before we dive into the deep stuff here?
Yes. And I actually have one of my clients who we talk a lot. We become good friends. And I did a TikTok on this, and he actually argues with me about it still to this day. And so we have difference of opinion, but because he's always looking for the easy relationship. He thinks that true love means it's easy. And I completely disagree with that. I think that's a myth. I think, and this is the thing though, too, is that there's scientific research on this. And I'm sorry, I don't have the resource
You're
out
fine.
here right now, but that states couples who actually quote unquote fight have better opportunity for a longer lasting relationship and a more healthy and satisfying relationship than people who don't do anything. When you don't fight at all, it means you're not learning how to deal with conflict, because there's going to be a day where something happens. And if you haven't had practice of learning how to deal with conflict on smaller things, if something big comes around, you're not going to make it through that potentially. And just because you may have a disagreement or discussion or an actual, if you want to call it a fight, it doesn't mean you don't love the other person. It doesn't mean that you have to end the relationship. And people are like, well, I don't want to fight. I just want it easy. I don't think then you want a true intimate relationship, because I want to be intimate with somebody in my heart and my head and my soul, not just my body. And to me, that's the most attractive kind of intimacy. And so it can't be, it doesn't make sense that to be easy. Like, that's a myth that I'm trying to bust. I'm trying to bust that myth. Yeah.
Oh, I can tell you, I've dated people that are very similar to myself, and it's very boring. So it's important, I think, to have shared interests, but also be a different person so you can learn from each other and grow. And I think conflict can be healthy if done right, which we'll get into here in a minute. So the conflict isn't necessarily a bad thing if it's done for the right reasons and done in the right way. And before we dive into that, Julie, we are at about an hour here. I'm very sensitive to your time. Do you want to keep rolling?
We can keep going for a little while. Sure. I got a half hour I can do.
Take a quick water break. All right, let's go. All right, so you mentioned a couple times about conflict, and in particular, the conflict communication book that I've been working on, you've been helping me with, which we'll get into a little bit. Thank you for that. So, what sort of conflict do you see? And you mentioned apologies, and maybe what was your way of handling conflict previously compared to kind of what you learned both personally and professionally? How did you handle conflict?
All right. So one thing I'm doing differently now at this stage of my life is, and that was I'll do personally with my relationships, is that if there was something that I didn't like, I would express that to my significant other. But if he didn't pick up what I was throwing down, I would just go, okay, and I walk out. So we never resolved anything. We never discussed the feelings. It just, nothing ever happened. So it was just the same old thing every day. Whereas now that I'm in a serious, significant relationship, I'm like, that will never happen again. I only have so much time left on this earth, and I don't want to waste it. I'd rather be by myself than to waste it, right, with somebody who's not going to respect things that I need. And so if I'm having an issue, I will not just, if I say it and I feel like I'm not getting the response that I require, I will say, I was hoping this would have been the response, or I need this from you, or I require this. Are you willing to give it to me or not? So I'm more follow up kind of a person, where before I just let it go and just kind of live like whatever. So I'm much more direct and clear. I think I'm more assertive now. And it becomes, I think, this self protection, because I never want to have happen again what happened the first part of my life. So I'm very careful about that. That's something. The other things I think that we have to remember, though, like you said, it's our response to people, even if we feel like we're being wronged. I think a lot of times we don't recognize this is the eggshell moment too, is that if I came home from work and you did not unload the dishwasher and I had a bad day at work, I'm probably going to yell at you for not unloading the dishwasher, right? I'm going to displace the anger I had at work and put it upon you. But on the other hand, if I had won the biggest trial I've ever won in my life, and I had flowers for my clients waiting for me at the house, and you didn't unload the dishwasher, I'd say, who cares? Let's go out for dinner. So that's something that, it's the exact same task. You didn't unload the dishwasher, but my response to that can change depending upon my mood of the day too. And I don't think we realize that often, that we think we're mad at unloading the dishwasher, but that's not it at all. It's our mood and we're displacing it on something else. So I think that's something that I've learned as well that I never knew in the past, that I've been trying to really focus on. Like, what am I really upset about? Am I really upset with you? I'm upset with something happened in my life. That I think it's really important that we need to take a step back and say, before I even say anything, what am I really upset about? And is this criticism going to change my life in the next 5 years? If not, do you even have to say it? Can you just let it go? You don't have to say everything just because it comes into your mind. You don't have to. And as a lawyer, that's really hard not to do, because I got paid to do that.
I've heard the saying once: if it's not going to matter in 5 years, it's not going to matter in 5 minutes. Let it go.
Exactly right. Yep. That's exactly right. Yeah, for sure. Yep.
So I know some of the stuff we can talk about is kind of different now because we've worked on the conflict book a little bit, but what actually works for you when emotions kind of run high? I know we mentioned a bit being more aware of your own feelings and kind of what's really going on with you, be it a bad day at work or maybe, I don't know, the dog made a mess, or who knows what people are dealing with in their life. So obviously knowing kind of where you're coming from, being more self-aware and self-reflecting is definitely a part of it. What
Yes.
else is good when kind of emotions are running high?
Yeah. So for me, it's definitely taking a pause. It's definitely leaving the room. I have started doing that and it has helped me out tremendously. But there's a way to do it. So
Hmm.
maybe the first time I did it, I just like, and I storm out of the room. And I'm like, that's not respectful. That doesn't help anything. And
I'm
so now
out.
right. And so now, so the next time I said, this doesn't feel safe for me anymore. I'm not getting what I wanted to get out of this conversation. So I'm going to end it right now and just let me go to the bedroom and just let me just do my own thing. And whether it's self reflecting, journaling, which I do a lot of journaling. Now, there's a third stage to that too. So I now do that, and that's been accepted in my household. But the third thing I do now is that if I find that there's a pattern happening, I give this warning shot. I go, you understand that anytime this happens, I will either hang up the telephone or I'll walk out of the room or I'll go for a walk or I'm going to go outside. So this is not tolerated in my life. I'm not doing this anymore. So I think that's kind of a third stage of letting people know what you're willing to tolerate and what you're not willing to tolerate. And just because they're unable to give that to you, it doesn't mean, again, that they're a bad person,
Hmm.
right? It just means that we have different ideals and they're not matching up. And so then you have to say to yourself, is this an ideal that I need to have in my life? I can't live without this with a partner. Or can I overcome it? Can I compromise and give in and be like, okay, you know what? It doesn't have to always be everything I need or want. I can change too. I can be a different person. And my expectations doesn't mean they have to be your priorities. They're my
Hmm.
expectations, not yours.
Sure.
So you have to, so that's that kind of ebb and flow that you have to kind of give each other.
Sure. You mentioned something that Megan and I actually talk about too, which is about hanging up the phone. One of my pet peeves is when talking to someone, it's just click. I know I'm doing this. Nobody uses these kind of phones
Yeah.
anymore. It's a bit, it's more, but anyway.
Right.
But when people just hang up on you, it's one thing to say, hey, look, things are getting kind of heated right now. So let's just hang up and touch base here in a half hour, whatever things cool off, rather than just saying,
Mhm.
da 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 click. Like like we said before, there's a right way and a wrong way to handle things. And
Right.
certainly just randomly hang up on somebody, the wrong way to handle it. Because then what happens, you end
Right.
up fighting about that or about cussing
Yep.
somebody out. And you
Yep.
forget what you were fighting about to begin with, because now you're fighting about the other thing.
Exactly right. It's exactly right. And to go along with that, because I actually had that happen yesterday. I was not enjoying this conversation. It wasn't going the way that I wanted it to go. And I had started the conversation. And I'm like, you know what? This isn't going where I thought it was going to go. And before things get too heated or upset, I'm going to hang up the phone. So I not only did I give a warning, I explained the reason why as well. And then when I spoke to that person later, they were like, you hung up on me. I said, no, I did not. I not only did I give you warning, the conversation was going to end. I explained why the conversation was
Hmm.
going to end. And so sometimes, even if you do what I consider the right thing or the respectful thing, again, it's that receiver. Are they willing to receive it in the way
Yep.
that it actually happened? Or are they so mad and upset that they only just see the hang up? You know what I mean?
Right.
So You still may have an argument about that, unfortunately, but that's where you just say, okay, that's your perception. I'm going to repeat to you my perception, and please listen to it. And after you listen to it, does it sound like really what happened? Or are you still stuck in your perception? And I find that kind of speak helps out a lot.
Sure. When in our last episode, Megan and I talked about when you're in a conflict, people keep trying to change the subject. Like, just stick to the story and stay on the topic.
Yes.
Don't let people change the subject. Just if you have to, keep repeating it, because people are going to try and change the subject and blame, deflect, and all the different things. I'm like, no, this is where we're at. This is how you
Yes.
heard me. Let's talk about it. And then
Yes.
let's address whatever your concerns are, but let's address this thoughtfully and in a loving, respectful kind of manner.
Yes. I would say that happens in almost everybody's fights that happens.
Yeah.
And I think for some people, it is a manipulated tactic. I think some narcissists will do that. So they put the blame off themselves and they bring up something completely different. And then the person gets confused. And what was I even talking about? I think it happens in non narcissistic personalities as well. But that's where people don't look, I think, as discussing, fighting, and arguing as an actual learned response. They think
Mhm.
of just as an emotional response. And I think that if you know that's going to happen because you've had that pattern with this person a lot, you know what? Pull up your notes section on your phone really quick. Or you have a piece of paper, write down really quick.
Mhm.
I know dishwasher. And so then when all of a sudden we're talking about the date from last Friday, you have, no, it was dishwasher. I'm only going to talk about dishwasher. We'll talk about your event tomorrow. Today we're
Mhm.
talking about dishwasher. Because you can forget what you originally were even upset about when people are really good at that. So you need
Mhm.
to have that written down. And so I had my notes section of my phone on the ready, and I'll type and I'll put it back down. I think you owe it to the other person saying, listen, I can forget things very easily. My mind can just go and I forget. And so therefore, would you mind if I pick up my phone? I'm not looking at anything. I'm not recording you. I have my notes up and I may just want to jot a couple things down so I don't forget to address those. So I don't interrupt you when you're talking. I think you should at least tell the person that you're doing that ahead of time because it could be perceived as rude. And now we're going to get in a fight about who's rude.
You're more rude than I am.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's funny you mentioned dishwasher because this is actually something that Megan and I have had heated debates over. Where eventually the books I'm writing, my life experience is going to come out eventually. You know, we and I talked a bit about that. And I had it where past relationships, they would intentionally leave the dishwasher, for example, dishes that I remember washing last weekend are still there, not put away or still dirty. And it was
Mhm.
like intentionally left for me. So a lot of people, I think, carry those scars. Is that the right word? Those
Yes. Yeah.
experiences with
I
them
forgive
into
them.
future relationships. And
Right.
then this is something I think I talked a bit about on the show too, where she sometimes has to deal with things that have nothing to do with her, frankly, and
Right.
everything to do with
Right.
my past. But she's very graceful in the way that she deals with it. And the key there is when you're in the moment, taking a pause again to take a step back and realize, okay, I know you didn't intentionally leave those for me. You just had a busy week or whatever. You wouldn't do that. I'm reacting based on something from my past and has nothing to
Right.
do with you. But it takes a lot of self reflection to get there, and then a lot of grace on her
Mhm.
part, be
Right.
understanding, and then work with me on that, which is just a part of
Right.
going through stuff, right?
Yeah. I mean, could you imagine being with somebody married for 29 and a half years, together for 35? I mean, think of all that stuff that I'm
Hmm.
bringing into this relationship. And he was with his person for 20 some plus years.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we encounter that. We definitely encounter that. And that's what to say is like, is this our fight or is this the other person's fight? Yep. That was the other person's fight. Yeah.
Right.
You've never done anything to require this kind of response. And I'm
Yep.
sorry. Or it can be, even if it's another person's fight, is it that big of a deal for me to compromise and always make sure this door is shut for you? Does it impact my life?
Hmm.
Do I always shut this door because of an air conditioning unit noise or something like that? Can I just give in? And yeah, even though I think it's silly, I can give in to your trigger because it makes our
Right.
life peaceful and who cares? You know what I mean? Yeah,
At the end of the day, it's just not worth it sometimes. It's
exactly.
really not.
Exactly. Yeah.
And by the way, your significant other isn't your enemy. They're your partner for a reason. So first you got
Right.
to remember they're not your enemy. and y'all need to work together because you're partners, right? And
Right.
so with that, are you trying to have a conflict with your enemy, or with your spouse, or with your past? Because more than often than
Right.
not, personally, the thing I'm fighting is my past. I'm not fighting Megan. I'm fighting my own past and my own past demons that I'm still trying to get over, and she's being very, very graceful about it.
I just wrote that down. That's so good. I love that.
Because that, man, I tell you, that is a constant thing that more and more things come up, and I wrote about it. I think I talk about it in another podcast where it just, what are we really fighting about? Am I mad about this? Am I mad about I had a bad day at work? Or am I mad about something
Right.
from my past that has absolutely nothing to do with you,
Right.
but it's just a trigger, like you mentioned, where it just sets you off?
Right. I think I even told you that Megan, I was only 14 when she was born. So
Yeah.
she was like my little sister my whole life, basically.
Yeah.
We did everything together.
Yeah.
And she was here visiting me recently. I had said a phrase and she did not like it. And I was like, whoa, where is this coming from? You've never raised your voice at me. And so we left the home. We went for a walk. And I asked her, I'm like, where did this come from? I want to know. And she told me, and I said, well, this was my intent. And I understand intent doesn't always matter to the receiver of the information, but you also can't assume that I'm aware that you have this trigger from your past that I was never aware of. So you do need to learn not to attack somebody if they say something. And let's just talk it through. And we had a great talk, and it was
That's
like
great.
never happened. In 5 minutes, we were done. She was like, "That's a really good point." I go, "And thank you for sharing with me." So then now I know I'm not going to say that to you again, just because I didn't have to understand it. But now that means enough to you, Megan, where I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm not going to say that
Right.
phrase. And she was like, "Thank you." So it's just, if people could just talk like that, gosh, what a different world this could be. It's just unbelievable.
Absolutely. It takes a lot of self-reflection. People have to be willing to put in the work to look at themselves and reflect on themselves and realize that, you know what, I am fighting my past here. I'm not fighting you. It has nothing to do with you. But that's not easy to get to that point.
What I also say a lot is that so many people who do go to therapy, and whether it's 1 hour a week or 1 hour every other week, they go to therapy and they think, okay, I went to therapy. You haven't done anything. You have done nothing. The truth work is the other hours every other day of the week before you get back into therapy again. And so many people just go to therapy and they do nothing on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And they wonder, why are we still fighting? Why is it still happening? Why am I so sad? Why am I still triggered? It's because you're not working on it. Like, you work more for your job and for your home and your lawn than a human being. You should be working more for a human being than anything else.
And also, it's, what are you putting into it, right? Because you only get out of it what you put into it. So if you're not being 100% honest in those therapy sessions, you're not going to get anything out of it because you're just lying to yourself.
Right.
And frankly, you're wasting your time, your money at that point.
That's right. Yep.
And that doesn't make that's just nonsensical, honestly. Also, fair to note that we talked about this before, that I've been through a lot and learned a lot about getting through stuff. So if people want some help, you could email me at coaching@milemarkermindset.com if you want me to help you through whatever it is you're going through as well. That help's always available to take it from someone that's been where you're at and can walk you through it. That's definitely helpful.
Good. Yep. Absolutely. And Mark has helped me.
And speaking of which, we have a conflict book we've been working on. We'll get into that a bit, I'm sure, more. But if you want to pre-save that, email conflict to podcast@milemarkermindset.com. So that book, we talked a bit about apologies, and this is something that's a frequent topic in a few of my podcast shows here, where it's not just saying, "Oh, I'm sorry I hurt your feelings." Megan and I talked about this on the last show. "Oh, I'm sorry your feelings got hurt." No, I'm sorry what I did to you, and I'm going to put in the actions to make it right. Because apologies without action and accountability are just words.
That's exactly right. Yeah, and that's passive aggressive too. I mean, it's been around so long. I think that psychologists and therapists have been saying, don't say, "Well, I'm sorry you feel that way." Oh, it's like nails on a chalkboard to me. Like, I did X. Say it. When somebody has done something intentionally and willfully to hurt me, and they are trying to apologize, and they say it in those terms, like, "I'm sorry you feel that way." or you shouldn't feel that way, or you're sensitive, or why do you feel that way? Because your life is so great. I will say that you're missing the whole point of this. You're not listening with love. You're not listening with compassion. You're listening to defend. You're listening to deflect, and that's not
That's
listening.
right.
The whole point is to say, I did X and I need to be aware that it hurts you. And because I
Yep.
love you, why would I ever want to do that again? It seems so easy. It's like just
It
say
does.
those things. Just practice saying those things. And that's the Cheerios. Keep practicing saying those types of things, and then they become natural
That's
to
right.
you. It's like playing the piano. People are like, well, I don't want to play the piano. You have to practice 4 or 5 days a week, and then it becomes natural to you.
Yep.
I don't know how to argue right. Well, practice arguing the right way. It'll become natural to you. It's like, it's just called practice. It really is.
I heard on another show yesterday I was listening to, like a world class CrossFit athlete. I don't remember who. I guess it doesn't matter for the sake of our conversation here. But the point of it is that he said that if you want to be the best at anything, you have to obsess over it. Not in a negative kind of way, but like you have to really, if you want to be the best at it, you have to do it over and over again and really put in a solid
Mm-hmm.
effort every day to make it become habit. Because again,
Yeah.
it takes 3 weeks to form a habit, 3 months for lifestyle change.
Right.
So you have to put in that work and that consistency time and time again for you to get to that point.
Exactly. Yep.
I'm sure you weren't winning cases right off the bat. You had to
Right.
learn all the tips and the tricks and the right things and the laws and all
Right.
this to get to the point where you were in your career and being very
Right.
successful.
And keep adapting to new situations and new things. And using the metaphor of being a lawyer, the laws change sometimes twice a year, sometimes January and June or July, or sometimes just you have to reread all the laws and how it's impact and redo your contracts and redo the advice you give to
Oh my
people. And
goodness.
is you got to always keep on top of it. But that's the thing is people say, well, I read this one book, so I'm good for my relationship. It's like, no, you are going to be adapting the rest of your life. So you see those cute little reels of these like older couples who are bringing flowers to the airport, or they're feeding their spouse because they can't pick up a fork anymore. They're dancing at Central Park. And these reels don't say that, but I touch my heart. And I always think,
Mm-hmm.
how many times do they forgive, or how many times do they take accountability, or how many times do they let something go, or how many times do they adapt to get to that point in life? It's a
Yeah,
continual thing.
really
And
is.
that's where it goes back to saying easy doesn't exist. It can feel easy because you have good days, but you have to have the mind to make it easy.
That's right. That's right. You mentioned you take notes going back a little bit too when you're in conflict. And that's something that I know we're going to have in this conflict communication book as well, where it's going to be a kind of a learning book. And then there's going to be like a workbook. And then there's
Right.
going to be little books you could take with you, kind of that are guided. Where if you're in the heat of the argument, you could take out your little notebook and, okay, write down the questions. And so that way you're not on your phone, you're actively listening, you're asking questions, and
Right.
it'll help you guide you through conflict. Not only learn how to handle conflict better, like you mentioned, but also
Right.
kind of guide you through better ways of doing it. So over time, you have that consistency and learn how to better handle conflict.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. No, it's the first thing after I had read one of the drafts of your book. I had said, I hope that's going to be something and you said, yep. Yeah, I'm going to have a little pamphlet. I'm going to have a little
Yep.
pocket thing because it is. It keeps you focused as well. Really keeps you
Yeah.
focused. And if you take the time to write something down and then you reread what you just wrote down, maybe you go, because that happens.
Mm-hmm.
When I write down my notes and I have all this stuff, and I'm like, I'm mad. And then
Mm-hmm.
when it's your turn to talk, and I go, okay, I bring up my notes. I go, half of this is crap. It doesn't matter. Really, it's just getting it out, and you realize, yeah, I don't need to talk about half this stuff. It's not going to help the situation, or it's
Yep.
repetitive. It's the same thing I've already said. I don't need to keep saying
Circle,
this
circle,
anymore.
circle.
That organization of your thoughts helps tremendously for sure.
Definitely. And that's something too that I personally have had to work on is when Megan and I are having some kind of conflict, instead of messaging her all this stuff, which is definitely the wrong way to do things, I go on my notes and I write out everything I want to say. And it's like, oh, I don't need to say all that. And that's all
Right.
repetitive. And so later on, when things cool off a bit, you can kind of go back and revisit later. But the other thing too that I am not very good at, if I'm being honest, is there's a difference between writing pen to paper or pencil to paper and writing notes in your phone. I can't put my finger on exactly what that is. Maybe you have some insight into that, but it's just different when you write something on a sheet of paper more than like typing on your phone.
The thing about if you have the notebook, is that it's there. Where if it's on your phone, like I will delete things off my phone a lot. I'm like, okay, well, that turmoil's over and I don't want to look at it. I want negativity sitting with me, so I'll just delete it. And then if the same thing happens again a couple weeks later, I go, gosh darn, I wish I still had that. So I could be like, see, we talked about this. Whereas if you have this notebook, you can carry it with you. You can say, "What we discussed this 2 weeks ago. Why are we discussing it again? Did we not have this resolved? Like, what's happening here?" So that definitely does help. Yeah.
And not only that, but it cuts down on the distractions because you got your whole life on your phone, right? So if you're
Right.
just on this one focused like little notebook, not only is it focused, you don't have all the distractions that comes with the phone, but you can also
Mhm.
kind of see the progress over time of, all right, here's where we were, and now we're getting better, and so hopefully things are improving. It's kind of neat to see that journey as well. I think
Yep, I agree. That's a good point.
that's pretty neat. So again, that's going to be the conflict communication journal, and again, conflict 2 podcast at milemarkermindset.com. If you're interested in that, want to pre-order, we are working on finishing that up. It should be finished here soon. There'll be some pretty cool stuff coming out on that.
Great. I'm looking forward to that.
Most definitely. So, Julie, how is all these experiences that you've came with? I know before we talked about the high profile, the expensive lifestyle you lived before as an attorney, and now you kind of had to retool life and look at life a lot differently. So, how has your life changed from attorney, family lawyer, Julie, to retired, hanging out on a boat, having some wine once in a while, living, I guess, the simple life? Julie, what
Right.
kind of stuff have you learned? How's that life different? I know it's a whole different mindset, I would have to imagine.
Yeah, it's completely different. I've learned so much more about myself. I will be very honest, where I always thought that I was just amazing. I thought I was amazing. I was very successful. I had the friends, I had the house, I had the car, I had the vacations, I had everything, I thought. And then once you don't have all that stuff anymore, you have to say, okay, I'm just sitting with myself.
Yeah.
And it's a completely different way to look at your life when you just have yourself. There's no distractions anymore, none. And so what I've learned is that I now have boundaries that I didn't have before. I think boundaries can be almost like a cuss word. I think boundaries can be used in a negative fashion.
Mm.
I have a healthy boundary. It's a boundary that people can respect. It's not a boundary where if you set a boundary, but it doesn't let somebody into your life. That's not a boundary. That's a wall. Okay. Because you can cross a boundary. And
Mm.
so I set healthy boundaries for myself. I end up being more honest with myself. I'm more willing to say, I messed up. I'm not always right. I can see your side of it. I'm much more honest about that, which I like about myself much
Awesome.
more. And the other thing is that, and I learned because I was single for a few years before I settled down here in Florida. And
Hmm.
the one thing too is that I think if you're going to commit yourself to a relationship, you better commit yourself to the relationship. And again, absent abuse, you commit yourself to that relationship. They're your priority. You chose that person. So that means you
Yeah.
dedicate yourself to that person. And too many times we only dedicate ourselves just to ourselves. We don't dedicate ourselves to the other person. And I think people are so independent nowadays. And there's all these young people on Reels and on TikTok saying, well, you just got to love yourself. That's not what that means. If you love yourself so much that you have no friends and everybody hates you, who cares if you loved yourself? What's the point? You got to love
Hmm.
other people, and you can't look for options anymore. You got to put all that in the past.
Yep.
You got to dedicate yourself to the person that you're with and just give it your all. And I think that's something that I have definitely learned. I've learned that therapy is the most amazing thing. I know there's a lot of therapists who just act like your friend and they may not actually push you. You can find somebody who pushes you and does counter arguments to what you're saying and thinking and makes you think outside the box. It could be the most amazing tool to have, especially if you can afford it. That's for sure. But those are the things. It's just really just being honest and just being like, you know what? I'm not so amazing. I can make a lot of mistakes too.
Very
Mistakes every
humbling.
day. And just because I make a mistake doesn't mean I'm still not pretty cool. A lot of times you're like, I admit I made a mistake, then what's wrong with me? There's nothing wrong with me. I made a mistake.
Yeah.
I'm not perfect. I did not intentionally hurt you. I made a mistake. That's very different.
Sure. I'm sure that's very humbling too, and that's never a bad thing to be humbled.
It's
Well, life will
also,
do that.
yeah, it's also very freeing. It's very
Mm.
freeing. Like I've unfriended people off of social media. I don't have to check it often anymore. I'm like, why was I ever your friend in the first place? I'm just free. You don't give me peace and you don't want to listen to me, not just in my time of happiness, but also my time of need or
Hmm.
sorrow. I don't need you anymore. And I got to tell you, think that would be a scary thing to do, but it is liberating. It's
I'm
so
sure.
cool.
I'm sure.
I love it.
You keep mentioning therapy, and we talk about life coaching here. There is mental health is obviously a conversation that has a lot of other far reaching conversations we could have another time. There's a stigma people have between getting therapy or counseling or life coaching or whatever. But what would you say to people that are like, I don't believe in all this mental health stuff, or I don't need counseling, or it's all nonsensical? Because there's a lot of people have that kind of very negative stigma toward anything in the mental health field and all that entails.
It was somebody who has a master's in psychology who was this close to getting her PhD in clinical psychology. Obviously, that finds sadness in me. And there's different levels of mental health, right? There's just the day-to-day coping mechanisms and just going to a therapist just so you can just have a better relationship with somebody, or because you're lonely because you've lost some good friends lately,
Hmm.
or you lost a parent maybe. There's that kind of situational. And then there's true mental health where you're diagnosed from the DSM and you need medications and weekly therapy and see a psychiatrist as well. So we have different levels we're talking about here, obviously. And this whole country back in the 50s, we threw everybody in the hospital, and then the funding, we lost that, and everyone's out on the street nowadays. So it's a really
Yeah.
sad situation. And I've dealt with mental health and as a family law attorney too. I mean, with people who had severe mental health issues and getting them help so they can't see their kids, or keeping the kids safe because they're not getting the help, and
Yeah.
so forth. But the things that I had never, even though I was a therapist, I had never been to therapy myself until I was going through a divorce. And then I was like, where
Interesting.
have you been all my life? I wish I had done it a long time ago. I wish I had done it 10 years prior. And honestly, maybe I wouldn't have been divorced if I had done it 10 years prior, to be really honest with you. But I think it's a very helpful tool. But I'm also into I call it self therapy. My boyfriend kind of makes fun of me, but I read it because I read a lot of books, and I don't read them like they're the Bible. I just believe everything in here because everybody has an opinion. Doesn't mean it's always true for
Right.
you. Like there's one very famous book out nowadays where half of it really was great, but half of it I'm like, this doesn't make any sense. I think this is irresponsible. And I wasn't willing to look deep into myself. I was, but I just
Hmm.
felt like it was irresponsible. But I think that whether it's talking to your best friend, FaceTiming your kid, your adult kid, or actually going to therapy, I think we all need to have that ability to be honest with ourselves and listen to somebody else talk to us. Like I've got a best friend who's been through a lot of stress this past year.
Mm.
And at the beginning, it was like, whatever she needs, I'm there for her, right? And I
Yeah.
always have that attitude. But lately, she's been texting me or calling me about situations, and she wants to handle it her way. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to now be honest with you. Some time has passed. I don't agree with your way. And this is my perspective on your way. And I think you should try it this other way instead. And she did. She tried it this other way. And she was like, you know what? It was really hard, but it worked. It
Hmm.
worked. And I ended up having a really good time on this trip. And you know, and I survived, and everybody survived, and it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. So I think a support system professionally, or even just in your family, in your faith, whatever you need to do, I think is important for sure.
Absolutely. It's a very well thought out explanation. That's good. Because a lot of people, I think, for some reason, have that stigma against any kind of mental health help. And that's very bad for our society as a whole, for the
I
individual
agree.
person, for their relationships. I know I've certainly been through my fair share as well to get through, as we mentioned earlier, a lot of the past scars and stuff that I've been through, certainly. And it's a ride. And it definitely helps.
Yep, yep, it does.
One
I
thing, and
recommend it.
absolutely. Well, one thing that I didn't have that I'm trying to beat other people is someone that's been there to help other people out that are in it when they're going through it, because I think that'd be helpful for people that are stuck and kind of
Right,
don't know where to go, and maybe they don't really want the whole mental health thing, but they want to be with someone, talk to somebody that's been through the stuff they're going through. So life coaching
right.
also I think is helpful as well.
Yeah, I like what you're doing with the life coaching, because somebody could be with a therapist for 20 years and they're still the same person, because you basically can become friends with these people. And I think a life coach has more of this is a goal, or what do you want out of life? What do you want out of
Hmm.
the situation? What do you want out of a relationship? And I'm going to give you some tools so you can reach that goal. And
Right.
it's more like of a beginning and end if they're willing to work at it more than just
Yeah.
let's just talk about your mommy and daddy issues for
Right.
the next 20 sessions and charge you $300 an hour. So I think that life coaching is after COVID, right? We saw so many new careers
Oh my
because everybody had
goodness.
to come
Yeah.
up with new careers and they're working from home and they're working remotely. And all these young kids now are like, there's like 25-year-olds who are making 600K a year because they're
Yeah.
influencers. Like people are coming up with new careers.
Yep.
And I think that's how mental health should be looking at as well, is that just because it was done a certain way for so long, it doesn't mean that this new goal of life coaching can't be the new way of looking at things and helping people. And I think that we need to be open to that and consider
Absolutely.
it, because I think it could be very helpful.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And again, if you're interested in that, coaching at milemarkermindset.com for more information, and we'll chat. So, Julie, what is there, all the things you've learned, which is a lot, you have an incredible wealth of knowledge. We'll dive into more in future episodes. What is the one thing you'd wish you learned sooner in your life? That it's always, again, if I knew now what I knew then, or however that works, like what's the one thing you wish you knew sooner that you could apply to your life sooner?
I wish I didn't feel like I always had to win and be right, because I had to
Hmm.
win and be right in my law practice, and you don't have to win and be right in your family. Okay,
Hmm.
so I wish I kind of kept those separate. Other thing though, that I wish that I had set boundaries up a lot sooner with certain family members that I did not. I
Hmm.
was like, well, they're your parent, they're blood, they're this or that, and other thing. And people always say,
Yeah.
well, blood is thicker than water, especially the older generations will say that all the time. And you know what? That's such a crock. I
Yeah.
just don't believe that at all anymore. And
Know the feeling.
I just wish I had set boundaries sooner in my life, because I wonder how that would change my life to the better. And that I was forced to setting a boundary. That's sad that I had to set it. And I just wish I did it earlier. So I wish I was more confident
Hmm.
in my personal life like I was in my professional. I wish I took care of myself as much as I took care of my
Interesting.
clients, my business. I was there for them, but I wasn't there for me necessarily. And then at some point you make bad decisions or things fall apart and you're like, oh my gosh, just if I had just done this. But then again, hindsight's always gonna be 2020.
Always.
No one's gonna leave that perfect path. And the point is that, okay, now that this has happened, what am I gonna do with that information? How am I gonna treat people around me now? That's all you
Right.
really can do.
Yep. I'm sure it's taken you a lot of reflection to get to that point. You want to talk a little bit about that reflection path and kind of how you got to the realizing all that stuff in your life?
I wish I had a really succinct answer for you. I really don't know how I got here, or it could be as simple as I have the time now. Because when you
That's
truly do
interesting.
work, you know, you're up at 5 and you start working before you're out of bed and you work till 1 a.m. most of the days, and you're working on vacations and you're typing briefs on airplanes, you don't get to think about yourself. And I was super mom. I was like the best mom in the world. I was up at 3 a.m. making peanut butter and banana sandwiches and driving 3 hours for a 5-second track race. Whatever my kids needed, I was there. I was super mom. I was super lawyer. I was super party host. I was super everything. But I wasn't, not once did I say what's going on with me.
Hmm.
And the couple of times I might bring that up to my spouse at that time, like I said, if I wasn't getting any feedback, I go, oh, well, let's walk. I'll just go exercise, I guess. I'll just go do this. I was never able or willing, or I didn't have the tools to look at myself and how I can help me. And now I've got all this time. So my brain is
Hmm.
constantly, so just because you retire, right? My brain is still going like a mile a
Of
minute.
course.
And so I'm just like, oh my gosh, like what was I doing? What was I thinking? And thank goodness I retired, where I get to have all this time where I can take care of myself so I could be a better mom and an amazing grandma, and be a good girlfriend so I don't
Sure.
fall into those same kind of patterns again. So I'm lucky that I have the time to do that. I understand some people don't have the
Right.
time to do that. So what I would say is that make the
Hmm.
time if you can, because it's just, you don't want it to get too late.
Life is very short.
Yeah, that's true.
So I'm sure it probably goes without saying, separate from the whole like drinking stuff, is your overall mental, physical, emotional, is your health overall better now than it was before?
Yeah, I know for sure that my physical health is definitely, I'm in the best shape I've ever been.
Awesome.
I'm eating more food. I was almost starving myself.
Oh,
I
wow.
mean, you wouldn't tell by looking at me, but I was I now eat. I eat food, I eat real food, and I exercise. more ways than I ever exercised before, like different ways I will exercise. I kind of mix it up. So that's physically healthy is definitely, I'm more sober than I've ever been in my life. I'm not sober every day. Like I said, like tonight I'm going out, it's Friday night. Yes, I will probably have a martini with my steak, but I'm much more sober. So I'm much more clear.
It's awesome.
I know how to think about things, which is really,
It's great.
it's just peaceful situation. It's just
It's awesome.
like I've always had perfect blood pressure, but nowadays I joke, I'm like, I can actually feel my blood pressure being low. Like you just have this sense of this aura around you, which is kind of cool.
That's really
And also, it's like I don't have to be. What I've changed too is I always had to be. I had always had to be put on. Like obviously, I look kind of cute for your podcast, but the times we talk and guess Megan and all my friends, I don't have to wear the makeup and the high heels and the fancy clothes and have my hair done. I had a friend a couple days ago. I think it was on Sunday this week. Last minute, she's like, "So down here, okay, the stone crabs are in season, and they're in season for a very short period of time. And they come in season, people down here go crazy for their stone crabs. And so we've got a restaurant down the street, and I had been at the beach all day. I saw sand on me. It smelled like beach. And she's like, we're going to Walls for stone crabs. You know what? Fine. Baseball cap, ponytail, flip-flops, and let's go. I would never have done that back in the day. I had to look like Julie the lawyer. And I'm like, who cares? And you know what? And nobody accepts me less. Nobody judges me. I was doing all this because I thought I had to. It was that facade that we talked about earlier. And I'm just like, I'm just me. And if I get to live the next 20 years just being like this, it'll be super cool.
So basically what I'm hearing is the perception you had, what other people thought of you, is what Julie thought of you.
Exactly.
That's interesting.
Yep. Yeah.
There's definitely a lesson to be had there in that, where obviously you're people are a lot more critical to themselves than other people are. A lot of this stuff is really just in your own head and in your own kind of sense of your own self-worth and all that kind of thing. Really
Exactly. Yep.
So that's a good segue into my last real question here for our first episode here together, which is, what's one thing, everything we talked about, your backstory, your breaking points or turning points, conflict, some of the life lessons you've learned, some other conflict stuff, some growing pains, of all that, what's one thing the listeners can take away from your story?
So the first thing that comes to my mind would be that how people portray themselves to you is probably not the real person, because everybody feels like they have to be fake, phony facade. They have to cover up their problems. They can't be real with you. And we get to know people based upon how they present themselves to us. And then when they don't do something the way that we expect them to on another day, we're like, what's wrong with them? And we judge them and we don't want to be there for them. And now they're finally being real. And if we refuse to show up for them when they're finally being real, well, good are we? And I think that, and when I bring up the fake phony facade and I call it fake book, I'm not being judgmental. I'm just saying that we all do it. But the point is that, are you going to be there for that person when they fall apart? Are you going to be there for them when they need you, when they're actually real? Which type of the face did you like, the left or the right? And so I think that's really important, and that says a lot about you, like how you're really going to show up for people. And also then seeing how people are showing up for you. Because I feel like I'm my most real self, and I've got people now who won't talk to me anymore. I'm no longer Superwoman, and they don't talk to me anymore. And I'm like, you know what? Then don't, because I'm at my most real person. So I'm trying to find people who accept me at my real person. And it's funny that I think I've gotten closer to my daughter than I've ever been in my entire life. And I think because I'm so real with her and we're like best friends. Yeah, it's pretty cool. Yeah.
So it sounds like you're like your person versus your persona, right?
Right. Exactly.
So you want to show people your person, who you actually are, not the persona you want them to perceive you as.
It's exactly right. Yeah.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Julie, next time we have you on, we'll talk a little bit more about family law patterns, some generational cycles, a little more on red flags, and I'm sure we'll dive in a bit more on conflict.
Okay.
So it's definitely been fun having you on here. We've went a little bit over an hour. We're actually going on 2 hours here.
I saw that.
So, whoops. All right, really good stuff. So again, we got the conflict communication workbook coming out. That'll be good stuff. I'm sure we'll talk more about that. So people want to find you, Julie. Where can they find you? Are you on the socials? Right. I know you kind of, I don't want to say second career, but you're kind of influencer life kind of thing going on.
Trying to get there. So yes, I am on TikTok at Mama Jules, MAMA Jules, JULES, POV, so point of view, the tagline for TikTok. I've got a few thousand people now following me, so it's getting out there. And like I said, I've been talking to people offline as well, and it covers things that we talked about here today. It covers my personal turmoil. It covers anything and everything. It just, if I see somebody on the street, I'm like, that's interesting, I'll TikTok about it. So some people find me amusing. I think some people probably find me annoying, and that's what TikTok is all about.
Right.
But yeah, people could follow on Mama Jules POV. That would be fantastic. I'd love that.
Absolutely. And also, at some point, we're going to do a Q&A. People have questions. So if you all have questions, email subject Julie to podcast@milemarkermindset.com. And
Sounds
we
good.
also have socials here. All the socials at Mile Marker Mindset, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, everywhere pretty much. So check us out. And Julie, it's been a good time. I look forward to our next conversation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mark. I loved it too.
The Mile Marker Mindset podcast is for informational, inspirational, educational, and entertainment purposes only. This podcast is not a substitute for professional or clinical advice. If you are in crisis or need immediate help, please visit milemarkermindset.com/crisis or call 911.